Alright, so let's try this. Let's go with the famous crane as first word. So we have an R and we have a E. Um, we have an R and an E, but they are not in the same place. They are not in the correct place. There's no A, there's no N, there's no C. Let's try Joker. Okay, there's an E, there's an R, A, and C. Let's try that. Oh, okay. So now we got the E and the R. They are in the correct place. And we don't have a J or a K, but we do have an O. So this O is not in the right place. And it ends with Could be power, but the O is not in there though, so it shouldn't be power. Anything that doesn't have a O as a second letter. Offer. Could it be offer? Let's try offer. Alright, so we have the O in there, but we don't have F. Let's try other. Okay, so there's no T, there's no H. Oh, let's try older then. Older. Yeah. Hello guys and welcome to another Pygame tutorial where I'm gonna be showing you how to create this Wordle game. I just wanted to make like a little introduction, actually playing the game. I am not very good at this game and I will confess that I had a words list in my other screen and I was checking into words that could fit in here. So now you've seen how the game it works well, and we have all these animations happening as well. So if I press again, I can start a new game. Let's just type in some words in here. So you see when I type in a letter, it has this box animation happening. Okay, and if I press enter and there's not enough letters in there, then it will give me this row animation, right? So that you can see now, and then it says not enough letters at the top there, just like the real game. And then whenever I input a word in there, then we have this nice flip animation happening. Okay, so let's try older again. Don't think it would be. You see this nice flipping animation happening. Okay, and then um, if you don't get the words, I'm just gonna type in the same word here just to get to the end, so you can see if we don't get the word correctly, it would have been howdy. I would never guess that. And you can just press enter and play the game one more time. Okay, so the idea of this game on the sense of typing in letters and all of that, it's not very difficult to get the input from the keyboards and then you just need to fix the letters in the correct place basically. And even the algorithm of Wordle, it's not that difficult to look for the words that you typed in against the words that you're trying to guess and see which letter is correct, and then associate the color to each of the letters and then show it to the user. That is a very simple algorithm, but the catch in here is all the animations. So the animations are going to be just a little bit more complex. It's not really complex, but it's a lot of math involved to get all the animations correctly, and you can still play the game while the animations are doing basically. So let's start with this. I created myself a folder called Wordle, and I have 3 files inside of this folder. One of them is called main, the other one settings, and the last one is the sprites. So the sprites where it's going to hold our classes, and the main is going to be the actual main class game. Okay, so in your main function, I just went ahead and I just typed in this basic window just to create a window and to start the project. So at the top here we import Pygame, and then we just import from the settings, and from sprites we just import everything. And then we have this class game Okay, so we have a constructor, we initialize Pygame, we create a window, we set the title, and then we create a clock. So these variables here are going to be on the settings file, which we're gonna see in a second. And then we have a new function that will reset all the variables every time you initialize a new game. And also we have a run function, which there is a variable initialized to true, and then while this is true, then we'll run through the events, the updates, and the draw functions in here. And then we have those functions in here. So the updates, the draw, and the events. In the draw function, I am filling the window with this background color, which is going to be set up on the settings. And also we're just flipping the display. And the event is just a simple event in here to see when you press the X button on the window. And then down here, we're just creating the object of game. And in a simple while loop, we're running through the new function and the run function. Okay, so whenever you finish the game, then this self.playing is going to turn into false. So this is not going to run anymore. And then we're going to reset. We're going to go back into the new function and then start a new game and then go to the run function again. You guys can just quickly pause the video in here if you need to and just copy this game class. Moving on to the settings. Okay, so we have a few colors in here, a few basic colors that we're going to be using. So the white, the black, dark gray is going to be set to the background over here. And then we have the light gray for the one of the colors, the green and the yellow. I believe the blue and the reds we're not using, so we don't really need this in there. But it's just because I copy it from one of my other projects and I just paste it in here. Okay, so just copy all those colors there and we're going to go from here. So we're going to create a few settings, so a few game settings. We're going to start with that width of 600 and a height of 800. So this is the width and the height of the window in that main class. In that main file is where we set those in here for the window. And then we'll have a FPS, which is 60, and a title, which is Wordle. Okay. Now we're going to have a tile size variable set to 8 pixels and then a gap size of 10. Okay, so let me just show you what is this. So this tile size here is the actual size of this one tile. Okay, so we're gonna call this tiles basically. And then this gap size is just a gap in between those two tiles, okay? So now if you go back into the main, if you copy all of this correctly, if you run your code, you should have a window like that with this dark gray background. And if you click on the X button, it should close and give you no errors. Moving on back to the settings, we're going to create another two constants in here for the margin. Okay, so I'm going to type this in and I'm going to explain what are those. So the margin x is going to be an integer and we're going to take the width of the screen minus brackets 5. This 5 is the amount of letters on the word times brackets again tile size plus gap size and then all of this divided by 2. Okay, so after the gap size in here, you should have 3 closing brackets and then you divide by 2. And then if you just select this line here, you press Ctrl or Command D, you should duplicate that line. And then we're just going to change this to margin Y, and this one will be the height. And this 6 in here is going to be, this 5 in here is going to be 6, because that's the amount of rows that we have on our game. Okay, so this margin X and margin Y will make sure that this whole board in here, or this whole grid, that is the game, is in the center of the screen. Okay, so if I increase the screen size, this will always be at the center of the screen. Okay, so that's why we use the margin X, which is the X axis. We have 5 in here because there's 5 letters in the word, and we have 6 for the y because there's 6 rows in here. Okay, so that is all for the settings file. We can actually close that for now. The first thing we're going to do in here, or the next thing we're going to do, is go to our sprites file. Okay, I'm going to actually increase the size of this a little bit. We go to our sprites file and we're going to first create, we're going to actually import Pygame first and then import the settings as well. So from settings import all, and we're going to create a class here first, which is the tile class. So for each of those tiles where we input the words, that's going to be a class tile for those. In this class tile, we're going to initialize the constructor, and as parameters, we're going to take an x and y coordinate, so where we want to put each of the tiles, and then we're going to have a letter, which is going to have a default to an empty string, because they are empty at the beginning, right, until we type a letter on your keyboard, and also a color of none. Okay, this is going to be a default color of none because we don't have a color at the beginning as well until we actually press the enter key and flip the cards to review if it's right or wrong. Okay, so we're just going to create those instance variables, self.x, self.y equals to x and y, and then self.letter equals to letter, self.color equals to color. And then we're going to also do a width and a height, which are going to be just tile size by tile size. And we're also going to have another variable in here for the font size, okay? Because we're going to be creating the letters or the fonts in this class as well. And this is just a little bit of math in here involved as well. So it's an integer of 60 times tile size divided by 100. Okay, so this is just to get the right font size for this tile size. Okay, so actually I think if you increase the tile size, so if you want your game to be a bit bigger, this might be dynamic as well. Okay, so we're going to create a instance function here, which is to create the font. Okay, and we're just going to create a simple font, Pygame font in here. So pygame.font. Not that, but sysfont. We're going to use consolas, consolas. See if I can type. There we go. And then the font size in there. And then we're going to create a render letter variable, which is a font.render. We pass in the letter and true for until alias to round the corners of the letter, and white as the color of the letter. And then we have another two variables in here for the font width and the font height. And that is we can take that by saying font.size, and we pass in the actual letter inside of here. So we get this font width and font height. This font.size function returns a tuple, right? Which has the width and the height inside. So we need to spread them into two different variables like this, but we're going to be using only the font height when we're doing the animation of the flipping the cards. It's not actually flipping, so it's just the size of the card of the tile is shrinking and then going back up basically, and then when it goes back up is when we have to increase the size of the letter, so it has the impression that it's flipping basically. And then we're just gonna define a draw function which will take the screen that we're drawing on, and then there's a few parameters in here, so a few conditions in here. The first one is if the self.color is none, so that means we don't have any color on the tile, then we're just going to draw a tile with no letters on it or with no background. Okay, so we draw a rectangle, which we're going to draw in the screen with a color white, and then this is the parameters for the coordinates and then the size of the rectangle. So the coordinates is self.x, self.y, and then self.width, self.height. This is width, like that. And then the last parameter in here, after the brackets, is the thickness of the border of the tile. Okay, so let me show you here. You see there's this little border around, so we're going to fill this. It's going to be empty, so it's the same color as the background, and we have this thickness in here, so that is this number in here. So if you want it to be a bit thicker, you can increase this number. So, and then we have a else in here. So if the color is known, we just draw a simple rectangle. And then if there is a color in there, that means we need a background color. So we need the actual color in there, which is going to be yellow, gray, or green. Forgot for a second there. So then we're going to draw a rectangle, also in the screen, but we're going to use the self.color this time. And self.x, self.y, the same thing, width and height. And this time we don't have this border here, this edge. Okay, so if you add this, then that means your rectangle that you're drawing will have no backgrounds, and the color that you put in here will be for the border. Okay, if you don't put this parameter in here, then the whole thing is going to be filled up with the color that you specify in there. Hope that makes sense, yeah? And then we're going to have another condition in here to check for the letter. So if the letter is not an empty string, then we want to draw the letter into this style, okay? So we're going to create two variables in here. So self.fontx is self.x plus, I'm going to explain this in a bit, plus self.width divided by 2 minus self.fontWidth divided by 2. Okay, and if you guessed right, we're going to do the same thing for the y. So self.y, but then in here is going to be height divided by 2 minus font.height divided by 2. So this calculation here is just to get the right coordinate for the letter, the x and y coordinate of the letter. Because if I use the same coordinates of the tile, then the letter is going to be drawn at the top corner left here, the top left corner of the tile. We don't want that. We want the letter to be drawn in the center of the tile. Okay, so you see every time a letter is inputted, it's in the center of the style. So we need to get this exact coordinate. So it's somewhere here where I'm pointing it. So that's how we get those coordinates, is using this this math over here. Okay. And then we're going to create a letter variable, and that we're going to have to do a pygame.transform.scale, because we're going to have to scale this to the font width and the font height. Okay, so we're going to pass in this time the rendered letter, so that rendered letter that we create in here, and the other parameters are a tuple which has the font width and the font height. Okay, so as I mentioned before, the letter or the square, whenever you press enter key, is going to shrink down up to the middle here, and then it's going to open up again with the letter in the middle and with the color. So we're going to be changing, we're going to be varying this font height here. Okay, so that's why we need to scale this letter using that font height in here. So every time we go to this draw function on our main loop, then this is going to be updated, and it's going to draw the letter at the correct size when it flips over. And then the last thing we need to do in here is just to blit all of that to the screen, or blit the letter to the screen basically. So we take this letter that we just created that is transformed and scaled, and we blit that to self.fontx and self.fontY. Okay, so that should be all for the style class. Okay, so the next thing to do here is to go back to the main file, and in here we're going to initialize some variables in this new function. So the first variable in here is going to be the self.words. So that is just the words that we're trying to guess. For right now, I'm just gonna hard code a word in here, but later in the tutorial, I'm gonna show you how to get the words list and how to make a randomize this word basically, okay? But for right now, for testing and stuff, we're gonna just hard code a word in here, and we can change it after. We also need a variable for the text, which initializes empty string. That's the words that we're typing in. So every time we type a letter in our keyboard, it will add to this text, and then we can blitz every letter to the screen so we can see what we're typing in. We also need a current row initializes 0. So this is just so we can keep track of which row we are in the game. Okay, so initialize at 0, that means it's the first row here. So if I press enter and it reviews the words, then we're going to go to the next row, then this number is going to change to 1, and then it's so on. Okay, because once we reach this row 6, we need to end the game. Okay, so we don't let the game continue if we miss the word and we don't get the word right. We also need a tiles, which is going to be a list that is going to hold all the objects of this tile class. So all these tiles here is going to be held in this list. And for right now, I think that's it. We're going to just create a function here to handle all these objects. So create tiles, and that is going to create all the tiles. You could put this straight away in this new function because we're going to be calling this function in here. But I just like putting in another function just to be a little bit more organized. So this is going to be just a simple simple for loop. So for row in range of the 6 in here, I'm just going to hard code that. So we have 6 rows, right? So for row in range of 6, we append to the title an empty list. And then for column in range of each of the letters, so 5 letters in the word, we will append to that row a tile. Okay, so self.tiles row, we append to that row. And in here, again, it's going to be a little bit of math to get this x and y coordinates. We're going to be using that margin x and margin y that we created earlier, just to get each of the tiles in this exact position that you see in here and in the center of our window. Okay, so first of all, we put a bracket and then we have a column times another bracket, tile size plus gap size, and then you get out of 2 of the brackets plus margin x, comma, then we do the same thing. Brackets, row times brackets, tile size plus gap size, exit of 2 of the brackets plus margin y. So this over here is the x coordinate of the tile, and this over here is the y coordinate of the tile. Now that we create the tiles, then we can actually call this create tiles in the new function. So we create new tiles at every time we initialize a new game. And then we can come here at the draw function. So just before the draw function, we're going to define a function to draw the tiles. Okay, again, you can put this code straight away into this draw function, but I just prefer putting in another function and then just calling this function in here. It looks a little bit more organized for me. So this draw function is very simple. Again, a for loop in range of all the tiles, and then for tile in row. Okay, so we're just looping through every row in this self.tiles, and then we're looping through every tile, so every object in this row, and we're just calling the tile.draw and passing the string to it. So we're just going through all the tiles in the self.tiles and just calling the draw function on it. Okay, so if you run this, okay, before I need to put the self.draw tiles in here. Once you call this function into the draw function, we can execute, and then this is what you're going to see. So you should see all the tiles, they are all in the right position and they are on the center of the screen. Okay, so that's gonna be it for this part 1, and I hope you guys enjoyed it. Leave a comment if you don't understand something and I can explain it back to you. And I'll see you guys on the part 2.